my previous video on Next.js, we looked at using the link component, and that is a great method to navigate throughout your application. However, for kind of more dynamic routing logic, so, a user clicks on a button or, you have to push a user to a certain page after they do a certain action, you might want to use kind of programmatic navigation that is client side. And when doing that, you're probably going to want to use the use router hook in Next.js, as this is going to allow you to do more kind of dynamic routing logic within client components. The way that this is going to work, if we look at my running application here, you are going to import the use router hook from next/navigation. You're going to make sure that you're within a client component, because to use a React hook, you're going to need to be within a client component. And this is also going to be for more so client-side navigation. So it's going to have to be within a client component. So import use router from next navigation, and then make sure you're within a client component using the use client directive at the top of your file. And then to gain access to different router methods, you're going to call the use router hook at the top of your component, just like you do with any other hooks. And then here I just say const router is equal to use router. It's effectively going to return an object that has different methods on it for performing dynamic client-side routing. So to kind of go over these different API methods here, if we come back, you're going to see we can call router.push. So on the return value of use router here, I can call router.push. And this is going to navigate to a new route, and I'll show you examples of this in a sec. And it's going to add a history entry, a browser history entry. So if you use router.push, you can hit the back button in your browser, and that's going to take you back to where you called router.push from. And when calling router.push, it's going to accept a string where you want to push the user to. And then you can also set whether you want to scroll. And we'll kind of cover the examples of this in a second. And then you also have router.replace, which is effectively the same thing as router.push, but it's going to navigate without adding history to the browser, which it'll make more sense when I cover this. But basically, if you hit the back button, it's not going to take you back to where you called router.replace, because it just replaces the browser history, doesn't add on top of it. And then you also have router.refresh. Basically just refreshes the current route, very similar to like window.location.refresh. And then you also have router.back and router.forward. It allows you to navigate forward and backward through the browser history, similar to like hitting the back and forward buttons in the top of your browser. And then you also have router.prefetch, which prefetches a route for faster transitions. So to kind of go over different examples of these, and then we'll cover some good to know things here in a second as well towards the end. But for basic navigation, let's look at the code here. So right here, basic navigation, we're just going to call router.push and pass in a relative path. So in this case, I'm saying push to the /dashboard page. If you see my project here, we have a dashboard page.tsx. So it should push us to this dashboard page right here. So it's a page that just says dashboard at the top. And we're just using the router object that is returned from this use router hook. So we call router.push dashboard. If we come back, I click go to dashboard, you see we go to /dashboard. If I hit the back button, it takes us back to localhost 3000, because that's where we called router.push on. So just basic client-side navigation there. Now we can also do it replacing the history. So in our next example, we call router.replace for the on-click on this button. And we just pass in the dashboard href. So navigate to /dashboard. If we click on this, we still go to /dashboard. But if I click on the back button here, you see that it doesn't take me anywhere, because it just replaced the browser history. It didn't add a new entry in the browser history. So it doesn't really know that we came from localhost 3000, just our home page, because it replaced that history. It just now thinks that it's at dashboard, and there's no kind of localhost 3000 that we came from. So if I do this again, replace, router.back, we see we don't go anywhere. Compared to if we use router.push, we push to the dashboard and then we come right back because it just pushes a new entry on the browser history stack. So replace can be used if you want that sort of behavior. And then for refresh, we're not going to see anything if we click on it, but if we open the network tab by doing inspect and then go into network, you're going to see if I click refresh, you see that it is refetching the data for the page here. So it is doing stuff. It is refreshing the page and refreshing the data, but we don't actually see the full page kind of reload like you might with window.location.reload. And then finally here, as our final example, I will close this. And then we can also disable scroll to top. So if we come here and for our refresh, I'm just calling router.refresh for refreshing the page. So you don't need to pass anything. It's just router.refresh and calling that. But for the scrolling, so I do router.push, but I set scroll to false. So as a second argument to your router.push, and this is the same thing for router.replace, you can pass a scroll for false, and this means that it won't automatically scroll to the top of the page that you're routing to. So see how I'm scrolled down here on my page? Well, if I go to my dashboard here without scrolling, you're going to see that I'm not scrolled to the top of the page here. It's still scrolled down, and then I can still scroll up. So if I come back, you see I'm scrolled down here a little bit, and I go to dashboard, and you see it's still scrolled down a little bit. But the default behavior here is if I use my first push to where I just go to router.push/dashboard, even if I'm scrolled down here, like I still am, if I click on this first one that's not setting scroll to false, you see that it scrolls me to the top of the page that I'm linking to. So by default, if you use router.push or router.replace, it is going to scroll you to the top of the page that you're routing to. But then if you set scroll to false as your second argument to router.push or router.replace, you're going to see that it maintains the scroll position here to where we kind of stay scrolled down. It doesn't scroll us to the top of the dashboard page. And then just some good things to know here about the use router hook that I thought are worth mentioning straight from the Next.js docs here. You must not send untrusted or unsanitized URLs to router.push or router.replace, as this can open your site to cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. So you should make sure that your URLs are sanitized and can be trusted when passing those to router.push and replace. Also, they kind of mention here that the link component automatically prefetches routes as they become visible in the viewport. So that could be kind of one reason why the link component is preferred rather than just using use router all the time. You can also use the link component in server components, which can definitely be beneficial. And then also the refresh could reproduce the same result if fetch requests are cached. Other dynamic APIs like cookies and headers could also change the response. So when using refresh, you need to kind of pay attention to how caching is behaving in your application, as that can maybe cause some discrepancies between how you think your page should get refreshed and how it actually is because of that caching behavior. So just a few good things to know there about the use router hook, but hopefully that gives you a good idea of how it works, how the different API methods work, and should give you enough information to get up and running with this use router hook. So thanks for tuning into this, and I'll see you in the next one.